Hello, Nikki. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Des. Yeah. How are you in your lovely pink jumper?
Thanks very much. Feeling lighter this time of year as we get into a probably a colder November.
Yeah.
So good to be talking with you. We're chatting about corporate clients and corporate work and so on. Perhaps take me back a little bit to your the start of the journey. How did you get started? How did you first get started in corporate work?
Yeah. Well, I came out of the UK National Health Service. So I had a role in the NHS, which had nothing to do with marketing and selling. So that was something that I had to learn really, really quickly when I first set myself up in business. But I wanted to work with large organisations because I worked with large groups of services within the National Health Service and other public sector organisations, helping them through change and transformation and making service improvements. And wanted to carry on doing that, but as an external consultant and coach. But I wasn't sure how to get these lovely big corporate clients. I knew how to get public sector organizations that are part of corporates, but they're a very different beast to commercial organizations. And that wasn't something that I had in my background at all. So I
Mhm.
went networking like most people do. And I got lucky. I actually stumbled across somebody who had a connection to the HR director in Group 4 Securicor and got that introduction and met with him. And that was my first commercial corporate contract all those years ago.
Okay, got it. So it was mainly via networking at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was really lucky. Um, the other organizations that I worked with through networking were much smaller than that.
Yeah.
They were the classic sort of small, medium-sized businesses. So they had maximum of about probably even only 80 employees and very, very local. And I knew that I wanted to travel and I wanted to work with organizations around the world, but I didn't know how I was going to make that happen. But that's where I started. And like I say, yeah, my first commercial organization was G4S 21 years ago.
Amazing. And then did it move on from expanding with that client, like further services with the client, or did you kind of shift to additional clients? What was your kind of steps?
Yeah, so that first client, it was a very specific service that they had acquired some new companies to provide an additional service across the whole of the UK, and they were having some real troubles with integrating that into the the culture, if you like, of G4S. So that's what I was helping them was with their leaders of these organisations. And obviously, I picked up additional work from G4S as a result of that. So I was able to work with them for a number of years. But that wasn't going to pay for all my bills. That was just one big client. And in the meantime, I was also working with individuals, private individuals, and small business owners or small businesses. And I knew that wasn't enough. And I knew that I wanted to travel as well. And my husband wanted to travel too.
Good.
So we packed up our bags and decided to leave the UK.
Wow. Where did you go?
Yes, we went to the Caribbean. So we went to Antigua.
Brilliant.
And um, while there, I picked up local clients in the Caribbean. So I worked with some adventure organizations and I worked with a local international school as well. While I
Mhm.
was there, I had a telephone call from a friend who said they had a friend, so a friend of a friend, that wanted some help with business development for their company in the Middle East. And while I was in Antigua, we had these beautiful white sandy beaches, turquoise waters, palm trees. It was stunning. And here was an offer to actually go and work with an organization, a company that was based in the desert, basically. So I said no. But then life changes. So we ended up in Washington. My husband was working in Washington at the time.
Yeah.
And so this person rang me up again and said, hey, Nikki, can't get anybody, can't find the right person, think you're the right person. Would you come out to the Middle East and work with me? And this was in December in Washington, DC. It had been snowing. It was really cold. So the idea of actually being somewhere warm was really attractive. So I said, yes, I'll come out. I'll work with you for 3 weeks. Let's see how that goes, and we'll take it from there. So that was my introduction to the Middle East, but it also was my introduction to thinking about how do I develop a business with a consistent way of getting leads. And this business was also about working with larger organizations. And some of the things that I had learned when I had been working alongside PwC, the consulting company, was that they used things like insight interviews and executive roundtables to get their clients. They didn't just rely on networking. What they were doing was they were setting up events that were really value driven for organizations and for very senior decision makers within organizations. And I kind of thought, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it on a smaller scale. And so that's when I started to actually introduce things like insight interviews and executive roundtables to get clients for myself, but also introduce it to this particular company that I was working with too. And we were very successful at getting clients in the Middle East. Yeah, and that's, so it wasn't just working for me, it was working for them as well. And so that kick-started a lot of work that I've done with corporate organizations. But it also got me thinking about how I can work with coaches and consultants and bring these strategies to them so that they can be successful with corporate organizations too.
Yeah, that's good. And so I consider that quite a strategic it's a strategic or smart process moving forward from working with, say, or focus on single individual clients to potentially working with groups, right? Hence the events and roundtable and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so smart move. Just staying on that for a moment, are they generally, with these events and roundtables, are they free events or paid or something else?
They're free events. Yeah, they're free events. So the insight interviews really is about one-to-one interviews with people. Now, a lot of this years ago used to be done face-to-face. You know, we didn't have the technology of Zoom, Teams, all these sorts of things that we have now. But you can do it remotely, and it works perfectly remotely. But so the insight interviews are one-on-one, but the executive roundtables are a group. You know, it's about 8 corporate decision makers from similar industries. That works really well. And the reason why it works really well is because people are nosy, they're curious, as you keep reminding me, Des, they're curious about what their peers are doing down the road. And so it's a great opportunity for them to hear what their peers are battling with and the challenges around a hot topic. But it also positions you with a lot of credibility and authority without yelling about it. You are bringing this group together and you are demonstrating your great coaching facilitation skills by being there and facilitating this discussion. And then obviously the gold is in the follow-up. that you do, the one-to-one conversations that you have with people that have attended those events. And it's gold because you've actually heard them talk about what the challenges are. So it's very easy to pick up the conversation. And they kind of immediately think, gosh, you really understand us. You understand the problem that we're facing. So you've probably got the solution as well. So it moves, yeah, very gently into how you can help them.
Yeah, and I'm picking up that's the very much the opposite to pitching and selling and that kind of approach, right? So it's as you say, it's more uh, gentle, building a pipeline and even having some patience in terms of nurturing that group.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's good. Just on a related point as well, because quite a few individuals we're talking with our coaches, consultants, and so on, often dealing with one-to-one clients or possibly in groups and so on. So some of them I know do want to make that transition to securing bigger contracts, bigger clients, corporates, bigger companies, and so on. So before we get on to that, which kind of where do you see kind of a couple of areas where they struggle to make that transition to bigger?
Yeah, I think just going back to my story, I didn't think I was corporate enough. Right at
Yeah,
the beginning of my business journey, I didn't feel that I was corporate enough. And I hear a lot of coaches and consultants say that, often because they've left the corporate world for a reason, for a very valid reason. They weren't happy there. And so the idea of going back in can be a little daunting because they're carrying the baggage of those experiences that they had when they were inside as an employee. But you're not going in as an employee, you're going in as a peer, as an equal to that corporate decision maker. And it's really important to remember that. The second thing to remember is that they don't want more corporate.
yeah,
They get that internally from their employees. They're looking for something different. And so it's important to be able to talk their language, but you don't want to morph into something that you're not, and
yeah,
also something that they can get internally. So a lot of us come out of the corporate world, and by the corporate world, I just mean having worked in a large organization. And you have that language. You understand what an organization looks like in terms of infrastructure. And so you want to be able to leverage that understanding, that experience. But you've also invested heavily in your own personal and professional development. And that's what the organizations are looking for. They know, corporate decision makers know that they need our expertise, and they are willing to pay for our expertise and pay what we're worth. But you've got to be able to talk their language. So the first thing I would say is you are corporate enough
yeah,
to actually have these conversations. The second thing that I would say is, yeah, there are probably ways that you talk about what you do and who you can help that could be tweaked and strengthened so that they match corporate language and corporate understanding. What they're looking for is outcomes and results, just
yeah,
like anybody else. So you have to be talking that language of outcomes and results that a corporate can expect from working with you. If you talk about, or even have in your LinkedIn profile, if you're leading with your methodology, your frameworks, you're asking corporate decision makers to make a big leap to join the dots between your methodology and the outcomes that they're looking for, or the problem that they're looking for a solution. So you probably need to look at how you position, which is kind of step one in my book and step
yeah,
one in the program. Yeah, you need to look at that position, the positioning that you have, and probably tweak that so that it speaks to corporate decision makers.
Understood. Yeah. So positioning is a key part of it, right? Pretty much one of the first key steps.
Yes, it is.
And
Yeah.
as I understand, be talking, especially when making that transition, be talking more or some more of the corporate language, or to connect with what their agenda or priorities are.
Yeah, yeah, that's key.
Yeah, understood. What would you say are the other kind of key steps in the process then, Nikki? So you got positioning. What else is important in order to secure and target bigger corporate clients?
Yeah, so a big part of this is not just about visibility, but about credibility. So a lot of coaches and consultants will be, and me included, posting content on LinkedIn in the hope that they're being visible to corporate decision makers. And unfortunately, there's a lot of noise, so you've got to be able to cut through the noise. And that's where credibility comes in. And that's where those lead generation strategies of insight interviews and executive roundtables really come to the fore, so that you can get into conversations with corporate decision makers. But you've got to have a system for generating those leads to go beyond visibility with content to actually providing something of value to corporate decision makers, so that they actually start engaging with you. And then you can position yourself with credibility just by showing up and facilitating one of those executive roundtables. Before you do that, though, you've got to be really clear about the solutions that you're offering. So you've got to be really clear about what your packages are.
Yeah.
And this is step 2 that I outline in the program as well as in the book. And so it's thinking through 2 packages in particular. And the reason why I say 2 packages is because you want to be thinking about, what does a quick win look like for an organization? These corporate decision makers, the pace of change within the organization, the changing priorities, there's a lot going on within these organizations. And so what they're looking for is speed. Very often it's looking for speed. And so having a quick win solution to something that's a symptom of a bigger cause within an organization is key. So what could that look like? Well, if you are about helping teams thrive and perform well together, then it might be around communication. How do we have difficult conversations within our teams? Or as a leader or a manager, how do we have difficult conversations with our team members? So that might be a quick win. That's an example of a quick win. And you can deliver that in what would look like a 2-day workshop if you put all that time together. Yeah. And you want things that are really practical and people can get results super, super fast. So, it's a 5-step process with a checklist on how to have that conversation, something really practical that they can get a quick win with. And what that does is it means that if you're employing that into an organization, and very often an organization will want to test you with a smaller program before you deliver a major program. So they will see straight away that this is having an impact, it's making a difference. And you can do something like a strategic debrief. That's kind of what I teach people to do. Have a strategic debrief to go from that quick win into your signature program. So you want a quick win program and you want a signature program. And that signature program is really about addressing root cause. So it's going to be a much longer program. It might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be working with multiple teams, multiple leaders. If it's a coaching program, you're probably going to be coaching multiple leaders. You might be doing some team coaching as well. If it's leadership development or it's around culture of the organization, you're probably going to be doing quite a lot of facilitation with groups and teams as well as maybe some executive coaching. So that's where the money is. It's
Yeah.
really in those longer programs. That's where you get into the 50K, up to the 250K. So you want to be thinking about those two programs. Can I share a little story, Des?
Of course. That was my next question.
Fantastic. So this is what happened to me early on in my business. And it taught me an invaluable lesson, and I kind of incorporate this in my programs. So early on in my business, I built a relationship with a fabulous woman who moved organizations. She was very stuck where she was. She was actually working in the ministry at the time. Couldn't do what she wanted to do as a leader within that organization, but she moved into another organization, and we had stayed in touch. And she said, Nikki, I am in the right place now. I can do what I want to do in terms of growing and developing the organization and its people. And I'd like you to come in and work with me, because we've talked about what it could look like, in an organization in my previous place. Now we can do it here. So that contract wasn't a huge organization. It was an organization with 600 people in it. And she wanted me and my team. I didn't have a team at that time. There was just me. So she wanted me to work with the whole of the organization and do an assessment, an individual assessment of everybody in the organization. And then on the back of that, what we were going to do was a huge development program for everybody in the organization. That contract, just for 1 year, we worked with them subsequent years, but just for that first year was 285,000.
Brilliant.
And I had to bring a team together. There was just no way I could deliver that on my own. And they had a very fixed time that we could do this program with them, because they were customer facing. A lot of their staff were customer facing. So I had to get a team of 7 together really quickly. So one of the things that I teach in my programs is how to do that, because you very quickly, when you start working with larger organizations, you need people working with you.
Yeah.
I actually lost a contract early on in my business because I didn't see that clearly. I put a proposal in for me to work with, I think it was a group of 20 leaders, and it was doing some one-on-one coaching, and it was doing some modules as well. I knew I could deliver that because I delivered it time and time again to cohorts of 20 people. But this one organization was twitchy about the fact that it was just me, and they were concerned what would happen if Nikki couldn't turn up at some time, or the relationship soured between me and the coachee. So I learned, that was another learning where I needed to include somebody else. So again, you really want to be thinking about who in my network can I rely on and would work with my client in the same way as me. So thinking about your bench, who would you have as associates working with you? And that doesn't mean that you always have to bring them in. You get to choose. You're the CEO of your company. And so you decide what resources you need on what projects. And that's why we have an associate model rather than an employee model. But it's really important to have a network of people that you can call on in those situations, because you very quickly get caught out. And, I got caught out that particular time and lost an opportunity because I didn't see it. But I definitely saw it the next time with the 285,000 contract.
Brilliant. And you were ready.
Yes.
That's good. And I'm picking up also that it's the fee structures are often, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not so much timing based or whatever? Is it more around daily rate, or like a project rate or other? How do you uh, work out, your kind of fee structure? Initially, I'm kind of thinking more for the coaches and consultants who are mostly solo or smaller contracts initially. So the key question is, how do you work out the pricing for some of these contracts?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And this is another place where people often get stuck. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, so there's a couple of things here. One is understanding what you want your business to look like. What's the revenue that you want your business to pay you? And understanding how much expenses you've got within the organization, and you want to make sure that you're obviously leaving money for tax and for profit as well, so
yeah,
for cash reserves. Yeah, so that there is a formula around that I use, and it comes from Michael Michalowicz. He wrote a fantastic book called Profit First, and
yes,
that's
yeah,
something that I use in my business. Yeah. So what that does is that helps you get to what you need to be looking for in terms of revenue for your business. On top of that, you want to recognize that the more business development you do, the more clients you're going to get. And of course, there's kind of admin and content writing time, whether it's content for visibility on LinkedIn, or it might be content in terms of your training programs, or maybe putting frameworks together. You don't get paid for that,
yeah,
so you have to allocate time for that as well. So when you look at your business, you'll probably find that the sweet spot is buckets of thirds. So one third is going to be admin, content, that sort of pie, if you like, or bucket rather. Let's not mix analogies. So one bucket is going to be admin and content. One bucket is going to be business development, so going out there and generating the leads for your business. And then the third bucket is delivery to clients.
yeah,
And only one of those buckets actually brings you the money. So when you're thinking about the revenue for your business, if you look at it, about a third of that of your time is going to generate that revenue. And so you can
yeah,
start to get to what a day rate looks like in your business. But the other side of pricing is to do with value-based pricing. And it's thinking about what cost savings are you making for the organization by providing this solution? What are the benefits in terms of productivity and performance to the organization from your solution? And right at the start, you're not really going to have a strong sense of what that is. So as you develop your business and you start working with organizations, doesn't matter how large or small those organizations are, you want to be thinking about, how do I capture the return on investment for this organization? And it needs to go beyond what I call the happy clappy tick sheet,
yeah,
which is the usual kind of participants feedback. So that you start to build this and get a sense of what the return on investment is. Now, there are some figures that are out there which show from International Coaching Federation, for example, that coaching roughly gives organizations a 7 times return on their investment. So you can start to use that kind of language and use the credibility of organizations like International Coaching Federation, but you also want to be capturing your own data and understanding the return for yourself. And then you can start to think about beyond the day rate. And you never
yeah,
share your day rate. You always talk about, the project. You might do phases of a project if it's a long-term project or program, but you don't talk about day rates. You give one figure for the program, you know,
Yes.
and that covers everything. Yeah, but inside your business, you will know what your day rate is, but doing value-based pricing enables you to really start thinking about what's the return on investment and pricing, you know, for that return on investment.
Understood. Yeah, and that's good to know. Most of what I do and the work that I do is focused, as you know, around business development. So I tend to focus on that in terms of as to use the same phrase as yourself, around the value add. So is the individual I work with likely to add 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, and so on, and then I work back from that in terms of a fee structure, and then in my case, it's a percentage as well. So I use a simple. So I don't know. In simple terms, I don't know what my daily rate is. So, but it's mostly around the end result and what they're seeking and what we can actually deliver as well. But in my case, as you probably gathered, I focus a lot more on the biz dev, business development, sales side, and a lot less of the admin and those aspects. So and it's good to know. Moving on from that, what would you say for someone, an individual or coach consultant who's had some early success with corporate clients, and they want more? Say that in simple terms, they want to add six figures. So they've had some early success with it, maybe one or two contracts, clients, and so on. They're now more serious about it. What kind of 2, 3 steps would you advise them at this for someone at that stage?
And I say, go on my program.
Yes.
Yeah, because there is so much to that. So if you've worked with a corporate organization, you've delivered a program, and you're thinking about what the next step is, so the gold is in the strategic debrief.
Yeah.
And you want to build in strategic debriefs into every proposal that you do. And these are the strategies that I teach in my program, and I get really excited about them and enthusiastic about them, I guess would be the right word, because they're simple strategies that people forget and they leave money on the table. So something like building in a strategic debrief into your proposal, into every
Yeah.
piece of work that you do with a corporate is key. Then the corporate person or persons that you're working closely with are aware that you're going to do a strategic debrief at the end. And the strategic debrief is not an executive summary of the project. It is so much more than that. It is what you've observed, insights that you've gained from working with part of their organization. And you're sharing this in a way with a view to, you know, we've addressed these things, but this is
Yeah.
what's showing up now. And would you like me to share some ideas on how to address those issues? So that is a lovely way to leverage yourself into the next piece of work. Or it may be that you've had a huge success with part of the organization. You've done a cracking piece of work with maybe one of the teams that they have within the organization. So
Yeah.
you can actually showcase that within the organization and work with other teams. So it's thinking about it before you actually give them a proposal for that first piece of work. It's
Hmm.
thinking about what you're going to do after that piece of work, which really gets you into the next piece of work, and positioning yourself in that way by building in a strategic debrief in that proposal. So that's one really important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference, just that simple thing there. So if you are a coach or consultant listening to this, and you are in this situation where you've delivered a fantastic program within an organization, go back in and offer to do a strategic debrief and talk about the observations, the insights, and get into a conversation about what the next step could look like with that organization. That's a simple thing you can do right now. And it doesn't matter how long ago that piece of work was, because what you can do is you can contact some of the participants that have been on the program, you know, ask them, where are you up to now? What are you seeing now? What's going on for you right now? Where are you seeing successes? And you can capture all of that and bring that into a strategic debrief now.
Brilliant. That's very, very specific. It reminds me of one of the key things I talk about, as you know, is the 90-10 ratio, which is what's I see the world has shifted more from 80-20 to 90-10, going toward 95-5. And when you mention strategic debrief, I classify that as an example of the top 10%, which can literally drive the other 90% in terms of financial results and revenues. Is that about right?
Yeah, I spot on, Des. Yeah, I think it is that 10%, maybe even that 5% that really makes the difference. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great. You've got, as I see it, you've got like multiple ways, 2, 3, 4 different ways, whether it's the insight events, the round tables, or doing, as you say, like a sprint or a short workshop, which then, as I understand, lead into that debrief, which then opens up into a much bigger contract, right?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Have I simplified it too much?
No, it's beautiful. Yeah, and one of the things that I came up with in my programs, because coaches and consultants that were on my programs early on were like, Nikki, what does this look like? I can't kind of get my head around it. So I actually drew a flow chart. It's a flow chart. So you outlined that really well. That's what the flow chart looks like. Yeah. Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
One thing, so another mistake that I see coaches and consultants make is trying to go through HR. Trying to go through, and everybody is heading to HR, human resources, to get into these conversations. And I actually find that the corporate decision maker that works best for me and works best for a lot of people, a lot of coaches and consultants, is actually the chief operating officer or the director of operations. And the reason why I say that is because they have that line of sight to the problems that we can help solve. And it's immediate for them. You know, they're seeing it day in, day out in their teams. And HR is a little bit removed from that. And also, they're bombarded by coaches and consultants reaching out to them and pitching to them. So the beauty of reaching out to chief operating officers or operation directors is they very often get the challenges. You know, if you're doing an insight interview with them, if you're doing an executive roundtable, or you're just having a conversation with them, they get it really quickly when you start talking about what you're seeing in other organizations. And they quickly move into, so how would you address this?
Yeah.
And, you know, so there's a great opportunity there. And the lovely thing is they bring you to HR and say, HR, we want to work with Des. We want to work with Jane. Make that happen. And
Brilliant.
You've just come out a whole heap of competition. So I think that's another 10% or maybe 5% that really makes the difference.
Yeah, good. And that's going in from a more senior level, right? A decision already made, as I see it.
And it might not be more senior, you know, because I do work with chief HR officers as well that are in the C-suite. Yeah, but the difference is they see because they're in operations, they see the kinds of problems that we help solve day in, day out, and are so close to it. And HR just is one step removed from it because they're hearing about it from the likes of leaders, you know, people in operations. But the chief operating officer knows exactly what's going on and where the problems are. And because of that, and because of how budgets are allocated, it's very easy for them to then go to HR and just say, let's make this happen. Can you organize it?
Good. Yeah, no, that's good. And it's really good to get a deeper understanding, Nikki, of how to capture some and secure these bigger contracts and so on. As a final point, for those who want to find out more about the program and so on, and get a better understanding of other ways as well to secure these bigger contracts, what's the kind of next step? Where can they find out more about you?
So I think the next step, well, there are a couple of options, aren't there, Des? So, we have a report that people could access.
Yes.
And yeah, so we can have a link below, or
Good.
we can put a link in the comments.
Or
Yeah.
just request
So,
it. Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah. People can request it. That's a really good idea. Yeah. So if you would like a copy of that report, which really talks about the steps that we've been outlining here and how to get into those 50 to 250K contracts, then just let us know in the comments below and we can send a copy of that to you. And that's probably the best way, is just to kind of raise your hand and say, or even send a direct message to me or to Des, and get in touch that way. And we can get into a conversation and talk about your business, and how you can leverage these steps in your business and get those 50 to 250K contracts.
Perfect. Excellent. Good. Good talking with you, Nikki. Thanks very much.
Yes. Thank you.
Cheers.